Good evening, everybody. That's going to be weird. Quick mic check with Mr. Trussell. Can you hear us?
That's a good one to ask, because he usually can't.
Both captioning is working, so I'm going to say yes.
Dick, can you hear us?
Oh, boy.
Can anyone hear us?
Came through Kate's mic, so.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Dick. All right. It is 6:01 p.m. on Monday, April 29th. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Lancaster Select Board here in the Nashaway Room. First, reminder, folks, this meeting is being recorded and broadcast thanks to our friends at Sterling-Lancaster Community TV. We will begin with a roll call. Mr. Allison,
Here.
Ms. Turner,
Here?
and Mr. Kerrigan are all here. And we will begin. We are going to do a now 28-minute select board meeting, and then we will go into the warrant review forum that we have scheduled for 6:30. And then if there are any items remaining on the select board agenda, we will return to them at the end. Okay, approval of the minutes for April 1st.
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes of Monday, April 1st, 2020.
Got it, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. 3-0-0. All right, now we are going to enter into public comment. Reminder, the Supreme Judicial Court tells us we can't tell you how nice to be to each other or how not nice to be to each other. So have at it if you want. But they don't say whether or not we can limit your time, so we limit folks to 2 minutes. We ask if you're in the room to come up to the podium and give us your address, name and address. If you are online, we ask you to throw up your digital hand so that we know you are there, and then we'll do the folks in the room first, and then the then folks virtually. All right, hold on, everybody. So if we could have 2 seconds, I would like to use 2 minutes of, well, I'll use whatever time I guess I use for public comment. Just to say that this is the last time this select board will meet in this room with my colleague to my left serving on the board with us, because next week's meeting is at the town meeting. And I have served by Alex's side on 2 different boards in 2 different centuries. But I didn't want to let this day go by without acknowledging the great debt of gratitude that the people of Lancaster have to you for your service to the town. We're grateful for your time on the select board and the many other jobs and responsibilities and all the hats you've worn through your time supporting the community. I know it's not over by a long shot, but I didn't want to have this moment go by without acknowledging that and thanking you, not only as your colleague on the board, but as a citizen for everything that you do for the town. So,
Thank you very much.
All right. You up for? State your name and address, and then 2 minutes. And I will wave my hand up when you have about 1 minute to go. Doesn't mean you have to stop, just telling you 1 minute, okay?
Okay, my name is Denise Hurley, 102 Bolton Road, and I'm the president of the Friends of the Lancaster Seniors. And I'm here to do a couple things. Like, first, want to thank all of our donors who have helped with the Friends and made donations to the Friends to help seniors in town. So I wanted to thank all of our donors, first of all. Second of all, I wanted to thank our members of the Friends. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do right now. And Sheila Casey, Phil Eugene, Heather Lennon, Sheila Maletti, Kathy Suits, Linda Cutler, and Susan Munyon. Those are the folks that are part of the committee who work very hard getting things done with the committee, and I just want to thank them, and they're wonderful people to work with. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is the projects we have coming up. Birdhouses. We're going to put together birdhouses to put in the backyard of the community center. We're doing a 50-50 raffle as a fundraiser for most of this year. We're going to start it at different events. There's a wine tasting event coming up at Neshoba Winery. We're doing a plaque for Jay, and I'm working on that right now, where we're going to put it, what we're going to put it on. Disc golf, I'm trying to get that to be a fundraiser. I'm working on that. The pizza fundraiser, again, will be here when the library does its concert. And then lastly, Kelly has a CPA project for the beach, and I want to support that and ask everybody else to support it at town meeting. Done.
Thank you very much. Well done. Anybody else in the room? Anybody online? Okay. That was brief public comment, so public comment is now closed. All right. Next item on the agenda is appointments, resignations. We have 2 to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Dennis Hubbard moving from associate member to full member and adding Michael Bray as associate member. Now, do we need to act on these or just acknowledge them?
So for the ZBA, you all are the appointments, right? So you could either do an outright vote or just ratify their vote.
Okay. Sir?
I don't see dates.
Dates for their term.
Terms.
Their terms?
Okay. I don't, maybe Michael knows he's online. I don't know.
Okay.
Came from Rob Alex.
All right.
But I can look it up.
While you're looking that up, we're going to move to licenses and permits. Madam Clerk, do you want to take us through some license and permit applications?
Certainly. I'll offer a motion to approve the application for the special one-day liquor license for beer and wine only, submitted by FC Stars at the FC Stars Soccer Field, McGovern Boulevard, May 23rd, 2024, from 4 to 8 o'clock.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Allison?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Kerrigan, aye. All right.
I'll offer a motion to approve the application for public amusement license, weekdays and Sunday, for the Pro Farm Market at the Lancaster Fairgrounds, 318 7 Bridge Road, June 8th, 2024, 8:30 to 5.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Quick question, they just don't need a separate one for Sunday?
They do not.
Okay.
Okay. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion to approve the application for a special one-day liquor license, all alcohol, for the Pro Farm Market, 318 7 Bridge Road, June 8th, 2024, 8:30 to 5.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Offer a motion to approve the application for public amusement, the 3rd annual Neshoba Rock and Brew fundraiser from the Carr Foundation at the Fairgrounds, 318 7 Bridge Road, June 15th, 2024, from 2 to 6.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And a special one-day liquor license, a motion to approve for the 3rd annual Neshoba Rock and Brew fundraiser, Carr Foundation at the Lancaster Fairgrounds, 318 7 Bridge Road, June 15th, 2 to 6.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And lastly, an application for, I'll offer a motion, for public amusement, to grant the public amusement license on a Sunday for a Touch a Truck event at the Brazilian Seventh-day Adventist Church, 357 Sterling Road, Lancaster, May 5th, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. We rocked our way through that.
We got the dates.
All right, and now,
Dennis Hubbard for a term to expire June 30th of 2025. And Michael Bray for a term to expire June 30th of 2028.
So moved.
okay. All right, moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you both for your willingness to serve. Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the appointment of Dennis Hubbard moving from associate member to full member for a term that expires June 2025, and Michael Bray being appointed associate member of the ZBA for a term that expires June 2028, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Congratulations to you both. All right. Well, we are 19 minutes ahead of schedule, so I'm scrolling.
Kalon and.
No, I'm going to that, yeah.
Oh.
Well, the public forum is the next thing on the agenda, so I'm jumping down to new business, which we would normally cover at the end, but we're not today. All right, two things, campaign and political signs, feedback received and bylaw adherence, and right of first refusal for Kalon Farms Incorporated, Severn Bridge Road, lot number 4. Which, do you want us to take out Kalon Farms first?
Sure. So, Kalon Farms owner submitted a certified letter to the town indicating that he would like the town to exercise its right of first refusal for the parcel that is parcel lot 4, which abuts 117. It's the majority of the, what was the farmland there. There are a variety of deficiencies with the notice in itself, not to mention the fact that there's some other legal things that I need to have answered, up to including it didn't come with a purchase and sale agreement.
Right.
We have no idea what the town is waiving because we don't know what the parcel is being asked to be sold for. I'm not sure that there is a buyer, and so, not to mention the importance of the parcel and
So may I
trying to
suggest,
protect it, so if you could
Table.
table that.
any objection to tabling?
No objection.
All right,
With the caveat, Mr. Chair, that we do not believe that this is sufficient, and therefore it doesn't start the clock ticking.
oh, yes.
The clock only starts ticking when we
When
have
they
a
give us
sufficient
a
notice.
sufficient notice, yes. Great, so once we receive sufficient notice, which I'm assuming we will lay out to them exactly what is sufficient, even though this is the second or third time they've done this, so they should know what is sufficient. If they don't, I'm sure we'll make sure they do. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
anything else?
No, I think the onus is on them, as you say, they're
Indeed.
very seasoned.
They have done this many times, so make sure they do it right this time and we'll be good. Campaign and political signs, feedback received and bylaw adherence.
So this has, this topic has generated a lot of folks online that we've either been made aware of or folks have actually called. So the issue with the campaign signs is that as it stands right now, I actually haven't seen one that is compliant with the bylaw. Because the bylaw requires that those signs be placed 20 feet off of the roadway, and as you can see when you drive around town, none are. As a matter of fact, the ones here, even on Main Street, would technically even be inside their homes, or at least on their front porches. So what Mike Silva was nervous about, and which I agree with him, is we can't just enforce one portion of the bylaw. He was very uncomfortable with that. So it's either that all of the signs that we're seeing, by the way, including ones that are non-political signage for leaf raking and yard work, etc. Or for this year, we acknowledge that a greater amount of education is required and that we need to refer this matter back to the appropriate boards, not only to talk about the 20-foot, but there's also a number of rulings and things that are going on at the state and federal levels where cities and towns are being told that we can't regulate when the signs come out and when the signs come off.
Yeah.
You can certainly regulate the size of signs. You can regulate that they can't be in the right of way, but there's some things that we can't. So it would be helpful to have the correct boards look at this holistically I understand that people want certain signs removed, but again, to pick and choose what parts of the bylaw, it seems like what did you say, a solution in search of a problem? So anyway, I'm looking for some feedback from the board on what you would like us to do at a staff level.
Yeah. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to eliminate all signs in town.
Okay. That's going to fail for lack
It'll
of a
be
second.
fine.
Yeah.
I had to say it.
Yeah. I mean, I think your approach makes a lot of sense. What I would encourage is that when we get the appropriate boards together, that we look at all aspects of this, not only to make sure we're complying with what the state and federal government are dealing with, but we take, I mean, it's probably been a long time since we updated our sign ordinances, because I know some folks, for private businesses and whatnot, think they're supposed to use one part of the ordinance and not others, and et cetera. So I will yield to the better judgment of Mike and you on understanding that education is really important, and then let's fix the problem moving forward, would be my preference.
So, in my last meeting, of course, I'm always going to be the, I'm consistent, right?
We haven't
Yeah.
heard yet, but we're assuming.
Yeah, it was, I agree that our sign bylaw is cumbersome. It was written years ago by the planning board with, I think, probably really good intentions. And it hasn't been adhered to as far as the distance from the road. And I admit, reading that, to be honest with you, I thought it was 10 feet off the road. So I admit that that is confusing, and we should, with any of our laws that aren't working, we need to, as you said, review them and change them in according with best practice. The size of the signs and other things have been brought into question, and you're right, it's a big question. However, the one thing that I know is that we talked about, because people don't know it, Kate, your ideas about including the things in the election packets last year was excellent. I was also really happy to see the informational pictogram or something about where signage could be on election day or not. That was excellent. Thanks to Mandy and Everett, I guess, on that. So anything we could do to eliminate confusion is great. On the other hand, as far as if we have an existing law, I would hope that we enforce it, right or wrong, even if we don't like it, and/or move people to change it. It's the famous expression, ignorance of the law is no excuse. I would probably be in violation because my sign is way into my house, but yes, I'm kind of close to the road. I don't know. So I do believe that we need to be consistent and just enforce our laws that are on the books, and then change them if we don't like them.
Okay.
So you want us to pick them all up?
Go for it. Yes,
Quite a wagon.
I know, it is.
Yeah. What action do you need from us other than?
Well, you both had different
Yeah.
things to say, so whatever.
No action, right?
No action means I yield to Mike's assertion and yours that that it is too complicated this year because there's too many variables, but we need to get going right away on making sure we educate people, and we've got 2 weeks left, so let's get through that and then make sure everybody's up to date and up to speed.
Part of it is not to ignore the law, but the candidates that are running for office often spend their own funds or funds of
Right.
donors to put out the signs. So it seems like with 2 weeks left to just unilaterally pick them all up and say you can't use them,
And I
you
will
have
say
to come
that-
back and pick them up.
Well, and I will say what's happening this year is not at all inconsistent with what's happened in the last several years. And so it would be unfair to the candidates this year to hold them to a more exacting standard, but not the same one we held last year or the year before.
I think the volume of signs is greater, but the size of the signs was what started
Sure.
the discussion happening, and then a deeper dive into the bylaw illuminated all the other issues that were going on.
Right, but just from an enforcement standpoint, we can't just say we're gonna take the bigger signs but leave, I
No,
mean, it's
no, and I
either all or
understand
none.
that. I
That's
get,
sort of-
and I agree with that. I'm just saying that I worry about, because my hope for our building commissioner is that he enforces all of our laws on the books consistently and equally and sees them. So if we have something, for example, famous chickens, right? That were so difficult way before your time, but did make for a colorful town meeting. You know, if that law isn't working for people, we should change it, or just say, Mike, enforce it. I'm pretty clear with all of those, so
Well, I mean, I think it's
understand.
pretty obvious it's not working for a lot of folks, like
Right,
folks who
so we
can't.
need to rewrite
Yeah,
the
so-
planning board, or the ZBA will be,
So I would suggest enforcing a law
Backed
that
up.
we acknowledge doesn't work for a lot of folks, particularly those on Main Street. who
And in
can't.
some of them, the legislature has said it's unconstitutional.
So,
yeah, not yet, right?
No,
Getting
yeah,
there.
some has. Yeah.
Mm.
All right, so go forth and leave them as they are. Do we need a motion or a vote on that?
just one more opinion so that it's one.
So at least we know.
So at least
I
it's clear.
cannot tell you how grateful I am that what we have our longest conversation about tonight is signs. That just makes me feel like we're evolving into a functional community. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And
early in the evening.
I'll tell my quick story. The previous chief of police in my first election, this was 4 years ago, just pulled my signs. Just called me after the fact and said, yeah, I got your signs in the back of the police station. And we had a debate about what was legal and what was not. So I don't have sympathy for anybody.
debate.
I don't have sympathy for anybody.
Much of a debate, probably.
I don't have sympathy for anybody, but, I'll counter, Alex, your point a little bit. It's like, it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not like this is the same as kidnapping or, arson, right? Like, this is, we're gonna do our best here. And to Kate's point, it's 2 weeks out. I love the idea of, okay, this is clearly an issue, let's not react, swing the pendulum all the way to the other side. Let's take our loss next year, do education, put it out to the boards over the season and say, okay, listen to your residents, because we got a lot of complaints, more than I've seen, and that's signal that we need to accept. So I love the idea, to Steve's point and to Kate's point, like, let's do education next year and not shame, it's just learn from the situation.
It's an
We'll
educational
send
opportunity.
everybody to the ZBA quickly, have a meeting, but I don't, no time for that.
No. Okay. Kate, do you feel comfortable with that? or do you
Yes,
need- okay.
yes.
Fantastic. Now, we have 7 minutes until our public forum.
And Jason, at least you got the call on my, do you remember that? All my signs were gone.
I
So,
don't remember that.
yeah.
I'll try to. All right. The only other things left are to mention that we have an annual town meeting next Monday evening at 7 p.m. on May the 6th at the schools, Burbank and Rollinson. And just give me 2 more seconds. And then we have our special regular town election on Monday, May 13th, 2024. Polls open at the Old Town Hall at 7 a.m. and stay open until 8 p.m. I saw Mandy walk in. Hi. Early voting is taking place currently,
No, it'll start next Tuesday,
next Tuesday, May
May 7th,
7th.
9 to 3 every day, except Fridays 9 to 12.
Okay, so early voting starts at this building, 9 to 3 next Tuesday, May 7th, and then Friday is 9 to noon. Perfect, okay. That's to let everybody know. But if you have a mail-in ballot, you can drop it in the box
Yeah,
anytime.
mailbox or the mail.
Or the mail. The mailbox or the ballot box.
Or
Yeah.
our office. usually.
Yeah, or just bring it in. You just can't vote twice.
Correct.
Fantastic.
I have some new business. Just happened today, so I'm going to talk about it right now. So I believe that I think we're to the end or very close to the end for the Historical Commission
Oh, good.
stuff. So really, this is just informational to schedule an agenda item after the May
town
meeting, after the town meeting. So the one right after that, because it's not pressing per se, right? It's not doesn't need expediting. But we'll want to have, we're not going to discuss it now, but we'll want to have an agenda item for open and then an executive session to discuss those aspects. So if we could just get those in the next regular meeting.
Okay.
Just a heads up that I think we're there.
Sounds good. Will do. All right. Sorry I wrapped my gavel on you, but we're going to have a 5-minute recess, so you can gab for as long as you'd like.
5 minutes.
We're going to go, yeah, you can gab for 5 minutes. So we're going to do a 5-minute recess and then, well, 4-minute recess, and then start again at 6:30 when the public forum was advertised for. Or recess.
Or 10 of 10.
All right. We unmuted?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, it is 6:30. I hope everybody enjoyed their 4-minute recess. It was a lot of fun. We are going to begin our warrant review forum that has become practice here in town the last several years. The purpose of this is to have an explainer, both if people are watching now or can watch later, for all of the articles in the town meeting warrant, so that when they arrive at the town meeting, they have at least had a chance to understand in a little more depth what each article means. We are starting, however, with an item that is in the printed warrant that Regina is going to come up and speak to. We have one ballot question that will be on our May 13th ballot, and that is relative to the police officers being in civil service. And we have considered this at 2 previous town meetings a while back, and because we entered a long time ago, we entered civil service through a ballot vote. We have to, if we do choose to exit, we have to exit through a ballot vote. So that's why we are asking one of the petitioners to explain to us what we are going to consider. In the warrant that got mailed to you, there is what is required is a fair and concise summary of what a yes vote and a no vote means about the question. So, listen up now, but there's one on your kitchen table or coffee table or recycle bin when you get home. So, take it away.
Thank you. Regina Brown, 198 High Street Extension, speaking as a private citizen. I'm speaking as a proponent for the Lancaster Police Department leaving civil service. Civil service is outdated. It is before prohibition. It is back before 2024, where we have certain standards in this town of what is acceptable and not acceptable. We don't have the issues that existed 50 plus years ago. Civil service is outdated, as I stated. It has also recently cost us what I consider one of our top candidates. It is a young man who grew up in this town, would have been a second-generation police officer for this town, is now graduating on Friday in the top percentile of his academy class, and he is going to Leominster because of civil service. We limited our bandwidth. We limited our prospects. And we cannot ask our young people to, hey, sit around and wait for our town. Sit around and wait till we're ready to hire you. Because anyone who has kids knows you want them to go up and grow up and get out of the house. So we really want to have candidates that we can pick. We also don't want to be limited by the old standards of this person had these credentials, but we want more credentials. We want better credentials. We want something that will grow with this town and be an ad for this town, not locked into what civil service says we can and cannot have. This is why I'm a huge proponent. I also am a 28-year employee of the town working with the police department to tell you this is the best way to go. Also, if you Google it, and I will say that to anyone out there, Google it, look how many towns are leaving civil service, not just Clinton, but other big communities because of the lock-in, and you're not always getting the best candidates. So thank you for hearing me out.
Great. And as I mentioned, there's a fair and concise summary in your printed warrant. I'm going to read the quick yes vote and a no vote, just so everyone understands. A yes vote on question 1, the only question that will be on your ballot, would rescind Lancaster's prior acceptance of Section 48 of Chapter 31 of the General Laws making the civil service laws in Chapter 31 of the general laws inapplicable to any sworn police officer in Lancaster who is newly appointed or promoted to a higher rank after the effective date of the rescission, which would be the first day of the next month following the vote to rescind. A no vote on question 1 would not rescind Lancaster's prior acceptance of Section 48 of Chapter 31 of the general laws, and the civil service laws in Chapter 31 of the general laws would continue to apply to sworn police officers. All right, now to the town meeting warrant review forum. So much fun. Do I turn that? We have a grand total of 20 articles. So much fun.
Okay, this is gonna work a lot better on the night of town meeting, because I won't be doing both of these things, so bear with me. Okay. Can you see people as they're checking in? Because that I definitely can't do, the third one.
I don't see anybody.
Bear with me 1 second. If I make the owl the host.
Making the owl the co-host. All right.
Oh, well, now you have to make me the co-host, because it won't let me share my screen.
All right. And who are you?
She's Kate Hodges.
I'm Kate.
I don't think that's right. Make co-host. No, that's not what I wanted.
Yep.
Thank
you.
How about now?
I swear it was just a minute ago.
I believe you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Article 1.
This evening, it is my pleasure to present you the Town of Lancaster's proposed budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024. This budget was created utilizing a zero-based budget platform and proposes a $1,018 decrease in municipal or non-school expenses. That includes all personnel and non-personnel needs for FY25. Municipal budgets, as a matter of principle, illustrate a community's priorities and values. This document seeks to define Lancaster's community needs as we head into 2025. Appropriation requests serve as confirmation of where we are as a community and where we wish to invest and enhance our programs and services, or to advance specific goals and objectives. The ability to view Lancaster's budget in a holistic and detailed manner ensures a greater understanding of how and why your government operates. To begin this year's budget, town staff engaged in several group summits where the department managers were asked to outline their department's core values and relate those values back to individual efforts, including needs and expansion requests. Once this was complete, managers then worked together to identify goals and objectives based on several overarching values. Staff dedicated a great deal of time to linking each of the allocation requests to overall goals, and in many cases, more than one goal. The result, this budget, reflects Lancaster's community priorities and department goals as outlined and committed to by staff. Additionally, and perhaps more importantly, through a collective work of the Select Board, the Finance Committee, the town staff, Lancaster has now entered a far more financially stable budget situation than in years past. In short, while the painful, the override did as it was intended in stabilizing our operation. We're now in the position to utilize town funds and to make the first payment towards the high school building debt. In terms of staff goals for the coming year, the overwhelming need to stabilize and right-size the organization was a clear front-runner in terms of objectives for '25. We set out to create goals and programs which increased efficiencies and help meet the needs of our communities, but it's far more complicated than simply words on paper. The first part of the budget book takes the time to review some of the key needs for our community from the staff's perspective. Beginning in section 2 of the budget book, we begin to outline the need for the override last year, as it's part of our 5-year plan that was outlined when we held this very meeting approximately 1 year ago. Strategic budgeting at its core surrounds the ability for those making recommendations to utilize multi-year planning processes. Last year, we could barely see the year in front of us. This year was markedly different. Now, in year 2 of the 5 years, we're already beginning to see notable progress in our financial picture as we're seeking to capitalize on that and limit tax increases. In terms of increasing efficiencies, a lot of work was done, but we also want to work efficiently. Doing so helps us measure how we use our resources and what we really need in terms of resources to do the job. That's the very definition of zero-based budgeting, and that's what we built for the FY25 budget. We started with zero, instead of simply what we had last year. Every budget was zeroed out. And when we were able to build it from the ground up, we were able to accurately see what we needed to do and what we needed to have in terms of funds to be able to achieve the goals. Civic education was also a huge factor in this year's planning. The town is more complex than it ever was, and matters are often debated heavily because they surround fundamental disconnects as to the reasons why certain things happen. Municipal finance is its own beast, and it takes time working with it, not just simply studying it to really understand. There are things we can't do financially that private industry can. There are strict regulations relative to municipal taxation that are simply not present in publicly traded companies. The same is true for staff in terms of educational needs. We do not need to articulate and train for the standards and procedures we require from the job. How can we hold people accountable? Moreover, how can we limit mistakes and delays if there's no roadmap to following through or what is understood and appreciated? In light of both these notions, this year's budget increases allocations for training and continued education for staff, committee members, and members of the public. Strategic planning was also another standout pillar in this year's budget. Department managers met bi-weekly, and in addition to that, department heads met with one another once a month to discuss pointed agenda-driven initiatives and town-related matters. As town administrator, I also held weekly meetings with department heads to have items of their choice discussed. It is through these meetings that many of the items that you'll see in this year's warrant arose. For example, our veterans agent tried to work with the assessor's office to help veterans in town use the work-off program. However, it was discovered that an error had occurred on the town's part after the statute was adopted in 2012, and it rendered the program unusable. This is where the impetus for Article 15 for this town meeting arose. The town's master plan is in its final staging, and the housing production plan was bid earlier this year and was recently finalized a contract and will begin in earnest. It's no secret that the majority of the tax base in Lancaster is received from property taxes. As a matter of fact, nearly 76% of the town's operations are funded through the levy. And while there were some years that the tax rate was hovering around the $20 mark, I'm pleased to provide a graph on the right which shows you the downward trend in our tax rate. In 2023, the rate was at its lowest in more than a decade. That was the same year as the real estate revaluation, and while many folks saw their taxes increase, it was due to home value soaring, not an excessive tax rate jump. That said, the passage of the override increased the rate another 25 cents, and that hit a lot of folks and hit them hard. We're committed to making it better, but it can't happen overnight. As alluded to earlier, the stabilization of our finances now has the ability to help us at least stabilize or even decrease our tax rate. Free cash has gotten a lot of discussion this year, and for the purposes of this article, free cash is only being utilized to fund $200,000 in capital expenditures. Those funds used are outlined in the budget book in the capital projects and long-range planning section, which begins on page 87, for those interested in reviewing it. Free cash will be discussed in greater detail in Article 2's presentation. In terms of school funding, Lancaster is part of both the Minuteman Regional Voc Tech and the Neshoba Regional School District. We pay a small sum to Norfolk Agricultural High School for students seeking an educational program that is not offered at either Minuteman or Neshoba. This year, the budget book breaks down the actual school costs in separate categories as general assessments and debt payments. This is on page 47 of the budget book, if interested. Minuteman's total assessment just decreased this year by about $330,000. Neshoba's increased by about $650,000. Neshoba's school budget is based on a number of factors, including the state's required assessment and, in cases such as the high school, a rolling student average enrollment. Neshoba's operating expenses increased, as we can see, but the total increase is very much in response to the capital debt service increase, which was more than $2 million from last year. This is partly due to the passage of the high school building project. Please note that for FY25, this is a much smaller bond amount. Lancaster's next portion that will serve next year is about $800,000. The reason for mentioning that is because looking at this from a long-term forecasting perspective, we need to take steps today that will help mitigate the increases in FY26 and beyond. Well, we can talk about that later in Article 2, but it's important to note that the projected debt payment for FY26 is thought to be somewhere between $2 to $2.3 million. So that's more than double this year. This slide was taken from Neshoba's budget presentation to the school committee and shows the aggregate amounts for Lancaster's assessments, including the state's FISC assessment and the variable assessment based on enrollment. Lancaster's increase from last fiscal year to this next one is nearly 10%, as our student population is growing at a rate which others in the district are not. Minuteman's building project also went up this year, about $230,000. However, the enrollment of Lancaster-based students has decreased, and the operating budget's adjustment for Lancaster reflected an actual net savings of about $300,000 from last fiscal year to this one. So in short, the savings in Minuteman's operations helped to cover the capital and debt increases and yielded an additional $300,000 in savings for education. To summarize the appropriation by taxation total for FY25, it equals $28,059,980. The school increase is $1,274,185. $28,059,980 less the county assessments of $151,616, which we are required to pay, and less the school increase of $1.274, has the town's budgeting actually equaling $26,785,795. So for those of you who can't do that type of math in your head, that means that FY24 with the school increase was about $27 million. Without the school increase, our budget would have had a decrease of about $225,142. However, the ability to support our schools is a priority, and we adjusted accordingly. When we add back in the school increases, the deficit became an increase of about $1 million, $1,053,057 from FY24. By paying the first school debt through free cash, we're actually saving the taxpayer effectively 70 cents per 1,000. Meaning if we didn't have that amount budgeted as we did, the average household bill could have increased somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 cents for every $1,000 of value. With the budget we're proposing, we believe that the average household valued at approximately $470,000 will see a decrease in their taxes of 45 cents. Not a windfall, not a huge increase. It's not an exact science. It could be lower, it could be less. We have to estimate these things 18 months in advance. The Finance Committee, Select Board, and town staff have worked really hard to bring this budget to fruition. I really want to thank the boards for their forward thinking and long-term planning and all of the conversations that the town staff had with me and with members of the boards. The Lancaster Finance Committee, Select Board, and the staff ask for your affirmative action on Article 1, and many of the staff members are here tonight if anyone has any specific questions.
So, any specific questions about Article 1? You've had a lot of time to ask specific questions. I just want to see if anybody else. Yes, ma'am.
What is free cash or where does it come from?
So in Article 2, there's...
Which we're going to discuss free cash.
Right, we're gonna pull some money out of it, but what is it? Where'd it come from and how does it get replenished and
Yeah,
things like
so
that?
you can go ahead.
You want me to go to number 2?
Well, no, you can, she's asking it relative to how we're covering Article 1.
You referenced it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would you mind if we answer that when we go to Article 2?
I don't care. I
As
just
long as you
wanted
get your
an
answer. There you go, sounds good.
It's a long answer, that's why.
Okay.
Yes.
Just real quick, what I think I heard you say is if we exclude the schools
Yep.
from the budget,
Well, if we exclude the school's increase of $1 million.
but so the municipal side, our side was 200,000 less than last year, is that right?
With the school level service, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other, can I see if there's anybody online who are raising their hands? And just a reminder, we're gonna go back to free cash. When we do, just speak out your name and address loudly. All right. With that, we're gonna be through these next 19 so fast. It's gonna be fantastic.
They're not all quite as long as these first two.
All right, Article 2.
Article 2 seeks permission to deposit $1,296,000 from the town's free cash balance into the capital stabilization fund.
Plus 500. 1,296,500.
But, yeah, sorry. Free cash is defined as a town's unrestricted funds which are available for appropriation after all liabilities are paid and the remaining balance is certified by the state. Certification happens after certain reports are filed with the state that are due annually by October 31st and after the tax rate is set in November. The order in which Massachusetts cities and towns hold their annual town meetings is the same order
Yep.
which the state certifies as free cash. Lancaster's town code specifies that town meeting must be held on the first Monday in May. Therefore, we're in the middle of the order relative to getting certification. Generally speaking, it's about mid-March. Obviously, we start our budget process well before that, in August, basically, of each year. So it's not until much later in the process that we have an opportunity to talk about actual free cash amounts and how we wish to utilize them. That said, as we enter year number 2 of the 5-year plan, which commenced with the passage of the override, that helps stabilize our revenues, and that coupled with the town's hiring freeze, the redevelopment of certain staff positions, reorganization of several departments, and deferral of certain routine maintenance left us with a free cash balance that was higher than what we had projected for FY22. Because free cash availability impacts a community's financial health, the amount certified was looked upon favorably by our auditors and gave the town leadership a sense of satisfaction in knowing that the plan we had outlined was finally going to see some progress. Retaining free cash provides municipalities with financial flexibility during capital planning or when contemplating how to pay for long-term projects and investments. Since limited cash balance activity negatively impacts a community's bond rating, and because this year may be the most important bond rating on it in recent Lancaster history, because of the new high school project, a concerted effort was made on the town side to ensure we were in a position to deposit into the capital stabilization account. This fiscal year's request to transfer the sum of 1.3 almost million into free cash to stabilization was the first time Lancaster has deposited in any type of stabilization in years. Specifically, the last time the town was in a position to deposit into capital stabilization was 2019, and that was about 500,000. In terms of general stabilization deposits, the last time a balance of any amount went into those accounts was before 2007, which is almost 15 years ago. So what we're doing here is a good thing. The spreadsheet seen on the slide is an exact copy of the one that the town submits to the Division of Local Services as part of our free cash certification. Remember, this is 22 numbers, as free cash is always 1 year behind the current and 2 years behind what we're trying to project here. As stated last year when contemplating and ultimately advocating for the override, municipalities that use free cash to support their current year operations run the risk of developing structural budget deficits. That's what led to the need for an override last year. These deficits risk future spending plans. The decision to ask the voters for an override and the voters ultimately passing it was the first step in correcting our financial outlook and making a concerted effort to budget and appropriate amounts which would sustain our operation and put us in the best position to meet our obligations such as education, insurances, and debt payments for the multi-million-dollar high school project. This is step 2, to use the retained earnings and place them into a higher yield stabilization account where the interest can be earned and used to pay down the next year's school debt payment. This year's free cash was a result of positive budgetary variances. In short, our free cash was certified higher than our free cash estimate was for appropriation, meaning, more specifically, our actual revenues received were greater than our estimates. Remember, we have to estimate 18 months in advance. We always estimate low because having to hold a special meeting to fill a budget gap is not only difficult for residents, it puts a financial strain on services, and we can't pay our obligations unless it goes through. The positive variance also means that our budgeted expenditures were less than the actual expenditures and encumbrances. In this case, the pre-override in this current year's budget and the consolidation of divisions and right sizing has led to a decrease in personnel costs of about $200,000, which in the last article, if you back out the increase for the school, that basically is what we're coming up with. We will likely see something similar to this in this October and November when we certify last year's, or this current year's, last year's FY23 free cash. Again, this is part of a 5-year plan, so it's hard to look at it holistically just in 1 year. Our right-sizing efforts further decreased our OPEB and our insurance liability and aligned better with our core missions. These are all outlined in Article 1 that we just talked about and in the budget book. Lastly, this positive variance is also due to the outstanding property taxes from prior year's end being greater than the outstanding property taxes of the current year's end. In short, we collected more, and we collected more on time because our residents and businesses are conscientious and responsible. Thank you.
Okay.
It's important to note that that was just a
I
thank
assumed.
you.
Okay, all right.
I'll wait till the end now.
Okay.
Okay. It's important to note that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts does not allow municipalities to spend in excess of its appropriations except for in certain situations like snow and ice. Therefore, the fund balance, which ultimately makes up our free cash, is really like a checkbook of sorts. Money comes in as we're paid, and in the following weeks and months, money goes out. So any leftover money, we realize it at the end of the year, and then we kind of want to squirrel that away into a savings account. If not, we run the risk of not being able to deal with unforeseen circumstances, emergencies, and we can't pay out folks who either resign or they're retiring and get payouts for their compensatory time and paid time off balances. Another factor is that real and property tax revenues are almost always partially deferred until collected. So this means these revenues are only able to count once they're received. Think of it as cash in hand, and why most pizza companies require that you leave a credit card on file before they'll deliver the pizza to your house. They don't want to get stiffed. For those reasons, real estate and personal property deferred revenues must be added back into the undesignated fund balance at the end of the year. The state doesn't allow us to budget or use any revenue estimations above what we received the prior year. So even if you know that a huge development is going in and you think you're going to get $100,000 in revenue for building permits, we can't count that until the following year until we've received it. The Technical Assistance Bureau recommends that communities understand and adopt free roll cash plays in sustaining a strong financial credit rating. For a $28.5 million budget, which was Article 1's appropriation, this is an annual goal of between $855 to $1.425 million. We'd like, through the passage of this article, to deposit $1.296 million into capital stabilization, which will help deter free cash from being depleted in the coming years and enables our FY26 budget calculation to begin with a positive balance. The town will continue to orchestrate conservative revenue projections and departmental appropriations which produce limited excess income. We'll also learn to look for more efficiencies in a way that we can orchestrate departmental turnbacks as practically and feasibly as we can. According to the state's DOR, quote, a non-recurring revenue source, free cash, should be restricted to paying one-time expenditures, funding capital projects, replenishing reserves, or paying down debt. Overall, the state recommends communities avoid supplementing current year departmental operations with free cash. By eliminating the expectation of additional resources later in the financial fiscal year to backfill budgets, department heads produce more accurate and realistic annual appropriation requests. This was true and remains true of this coming year as outlined in Article 1. Free cash is truly a critical component of our town's financial viability. It is with that in mind that we ask for your affirmative vote on this article. Lancaster Finance Committee and a Select Board also recommend affirmative action on Article 2.
Okay. You can take a seat. All right. Any questions about free cash? She's never asking another question about free cash. She knows everything in the world about free cash now. Yes. Oh, we have a hand up. Hand up online. Geramo, no first name.
Yeah, this is Deb Duramo, 127 Harvard Road. It was hard to hear, but I just had a question.
Okay.
I was wondering what the state recommends for free cash and how we compare to that.
Okay. We will get you that answer right now.
Okay, so the state, so the Technical Assistance Bureau, can you hear me, okay? Is that a no?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The Technical Assistance Bureau recommends that communities use somewhere or squirrel away somewhere between 3 to 5% of their total annual budget. So for this year's $28.5 million budget, which is the amount in Article 1, this is between $855 to $1.425 million, and we are asking for $1.296 million into capital stabilization and $500. I was rounding.
I know you just keep forgetting that poor 500. Yes.
Yes, Deb's done. So I just want to talk a little bit about free cash. I'm not a town administrator, I'm not classically trained. But I think about it as like savings, right? It's your savings account. And I want to reiterate to residents, Kate said it, but she said a lot. This is a really important year for free cash and stabilization because of the high school. And what is our bond rating?
Well, we don't know yet. We're going for the audit now, this year.
So the more stable we look, the better kind of credit score we're gonna have, and the better loan terms we're gonna get. And that's what makes it really important. And it kind of stinks that we've had to take the path we've had, but in the long term, thinking 10, 20 years, in my opinion, I think in the board's opinion, it's the right path forward for fiscal stability going. Thank you.
Ms. Turner.
It's taxpayers' money that you collected ahead of time, that we all could use.
So,
Debating the.
No, we're not.
no, but I'm sorry, I'm confused. I understand the answer, sorry. So what we talked about is we're putting money into stabilization, capital stabilization.
Capital stabilization.
As opposed to, we have our other a standard stabilization.
Yes.
So the free cash amount, I think you said was 1.2 or something, but I think it's,
1.2965.
is that all of free cash? Is
No.
that- Okay.
There's still 200,000 that was allocated to capital, and then there's an additional 200,000 that will remain in free cash.
Okay, that's what so I was,
But they take all of those balances into account when they do our bond audit, so that's,
right. So the total free cash, which I think was the question, was the total free cash, it was how much? Not to misquote, and 500. No.
you're asking the total free cash for the article?
No, I thought
No,
the total,
that's-
I think the question was how much total free
What we
cash it
get
was.
from certified.
And then we're
member
gonna
last
put,
time,
Is Cheryl, are you there?
She is.
Yes, I am.
Do you know the number, the certified free cash the last time we got it
this year.
this year?
What's that?
Logic would say it's about $1.7 million.
I think
Yeah, it's in the budget book, so I can.
I know, it's just,
Excuse me, it was 2,679,957.
Okay.
2.6, okay. And we're putting towards capitalization is the 1 point,
The cap,
Two.
1.296,500.
yeah.
Kathy Hughes, you have your hand up online. Be sure to unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right, sorry, I wasn't unmuting. Kathy Hughes, 80 Fire Road 11. I wanted to ask a question. There was some mention of the second bond payment. Is that part of this 1.2 or is that in addition to this 1.2? That was my first question.
So, clarify what so this 1.296,500 is going from free cash to capital stabilization. There was resources used for, I think what you're referring to is the school's first financing payment, is that what you're talking about?
I'm actually talking about the second one. I know that there was the first one, and then I wanted to know if this 1.2 296,000 was, is that inclusive of that 500, I believe it was, I don't have the exact number, thousand that was appropriated for the second bond payment?
Okay, so the second bond payment, we don't have the total. So we were holding somewhere between 2 and 2.4 million. That's in FY '26. And if this is approved to go into stabilization, a corresponding article would be in next year's town meeting to pay a portion of the 2 point whatever it is that's going to be due for year 2, utilizing these funds. Understanding it's not 100%, but it would make a good dent.
Does that answer your question?
Right. It's not really, but that's okay. Secondly.
I think the answer to your question is, it's not, the second bond payment is not part of this article, but next year, potentially money that goes into this article could be used for part of that second bond payment.
You can't deposit the money into the stabilization account and then take it out on the same day, or the same meeting, frankly. It's like you put it in savings and then you can reallocate that at another time.
I think what I was wondering is, there was mention of 500,000 or something, I don't have the exact number, going towards that next bond payment next year. And I wanted to know if that is inclusive in this, or if that is in addition to this.
So,
Cheryl?
yeah.
Part of Article 1, the payment for the school debt is funded through free cash. So in addition to your 1.296, you're also using 717,000 for the first bond payment.
I'm asking about the second bond payment.
Second is due until fiscal 26.
I understand that.
The plan is part of what gets put away into the capital stabilization will help offset that.
Okay, so it's inclusive in this, is that what we're hearing?
Part of that, yes.
Part of that's one there.
Yes, part of that payment that won't be made until next year is in the fund that we are depositing this money in, so. If we vote for it.
It would be drawn
It would
from
be drawn from-
stabilization that you're
Yes.
putting it away. That's what you're saying.
And my second question is, with respect to future budgeting or previous budgeting, what was the expected cash, what was the expected free cash to go to this capital stabilization fund this year? What is it next year? And what is it in the following year? Because it seems to me that you're over collecting on taxes, and this was even before the override went into play. So it sounds like you're taking a lot of our money right now to fund things down the road.
Right.
And it's,
So your question, I want to get you,
I know all about it, but I
this
just
is not-
really wanted to understand
Right.
what the budgeting process is for this fund.
for what, for the stabilization fund or for free cash?
For the stabilization
She asked the question, I'm just going to get her to answer the clarification question.
And-
Which fund are you referring
I guess
to?
I'd like to know both. I want to know what the free cash is and how much you intend to put into this each year. Because you put in quite a lot this year, and that's even before the override. We're paying more taxes now, so presumably you're going to even be collecting more. And I mean, I appreciate your positive budgeting, but I hope you continue to do positive budgeting and not start spending this extra money that's coming into play.
Okay, so I guess I just need to understand, is your question relative to free cash in general or this article in specific? Because there's a lot of folks here who want to get through the remaining 18 articles. And so if it's free cash in general, we can have that conversation. As we start our budget process in August, we go through all of this at virtually every meeting we have. But we're glad to talk through. If there's a specific thing about this article, let's try to keep it focused to that, and then we can come back to.
I would say that I can't make a decision about this if I don't know what's happening next year, or what your expectation is and what your budget is for next year. Because if you're going to continue to be putting this kind of money into a cash stabilization fund every year because of the extra revenue you're getting from the taxpayers, then I would say this is an absolute no.
Okay.
However, if you're going to adjust our taxes so that we don't have this type of excess funding going on, I might think of it differently.
Okay, so I think it's difficult for us to say, given how free cash is developed, it's difficult for us to say how much is going to be certified by the state 18 months from now relative to what we're doing now. So it's difficult to estimate that. I mean, I think what you're seeing in the budget process that we've embarked on this year and started a couple of years ago under Kate's leadership is a very transparent budget process. This year is the first year we did the zero-based budgeting, which allows us to have the most honest budget we can possibly have with you to make sure we're not overspending the townspeople's money. And we will continue to make adjustments as budget years warrant, but I don't know that it's possible for us to give you numbers of what we would possibly transfer into an account in more than a year from now, not knowing what the numbers are.
Well, I do my budgeting, and I'm a little surprised to hear that answer. So I would hope that you would have a budget plan that goes out 4 or 5 years and not just 1 year.
Appreciate
And I
it.
would think that that would be prudent budgeting for
Appreciate
everybody.
it, thank you.
So I think I heard Kate say, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 to 5% is what the state recommends?
Correct.
Right, which is what we're doing.
So the state recommends 3 to 5%, so that's a baseline, and
Right.
we're between those parameters.
Yes, we are.
right now.
Yes.
My comment was about the same. So I would expect if we were within state guidelines
Which we are.
she's
Yeah.
talking about next year. So if we ended up within state guidelines, then it would be 3 to 5% of FY '26 budget
Well,
would be
FY25.
free cash.
I mean, it's a
FY25.
really hard thing to project because I don't know, in the last 18 months, we've sort of cut and regionalized and put things together as much as we can. The one thing that's not necessarily a known is what we're gonna get for building permits, who's gonna put additions, like the new growth.
I also want to point out, we're discussing this relative to this year's budget and this year's circumstance. So we have parameters that we use, Cheryl and Kate use, and we'll do the best we can to continue to do strong budgeting. But this, for the purpose of everyone who's here and watching online, this is about this budget forum, the warrant forum. And so I'd like to see if we can wrap up Article 2 and move on to Article 3 if we can.
Kate, you said, I think it impacts people's discussion. You said there hasn't been money deposited to capital stabilization in quite a while. What is the current balance of capital stabilization? Do you know?
257,000.
257,000.
Okay. And then we would add
1.29.
1.965.
essentially, but right. And what is in the regular stabilization?
1.8 million. And that's the one that has not been added to in over 15 years.
Since 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Any other, yes? You said you had no more questions about free cash, but that's no.
Susan Sussman, 64 Nicholas Drive. Your explanation was fabulous, thank you very much. It sounds like the budgeting is moving in a fabulous direction also. So, but my question is, one thing you mentioned is that we get savings as a town. You use the phrase delayed maintenance, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So will some funds be allocated? Because, I understand you have a budget and you're trying to keep the cost down as much as possible, and then this is the free cash thing is basically an adjustment that for things that you couldn't predict. And so there's that money. Is some of that projected to be used to address delayed maintenance?
Yes, so in Article 1, there's $200,000 that we put forward for capital. Candidly, I think we need much, much more than that. The building next door and the library combined are millions and millions. So certainly we're not doing a very good job of putting it away to that. But it was sort of a question with the select board and the finance committee of, do we want to not have this huge looming payment and try to reduce it a little bit by using free cash, or take care of our assets? And there's like not a good answer to that because either way something suffers. But
will some of it be reallocated to maintenance?
The 200,000, yes,
This year.
yeah, for this year.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
But it doesn't mean that in the future we couldn't use that very fund for exactly what you're talking
Correct.
about. Okay,
Thank you.
now on to Article 3, Renewable Energy Enterprise Fund.
Okay, I think this one should be easy.
You said the last one was going to be brief.
No, I didn't. I said only 1 and 2 are long. So, Article 3 seeks the ability to appropriate from the available fund the sum of $176,600.
Are you sure?
Well, I thought I was. It says, yeah, I am.
Did I not think so?
No, you just
No,
expanded
just
the people.
decrease, yeah.
Oh, it's right behind it. I thought it was the next one. Okay.
Sorry, so this is the retained earnings with the town solar field on Route 70 in North Lancaster. This is an enterprise fund, which is a separate accounting and financial reporting mechanism for which revenues and expenditures are segregated into accounts with separate financial statements from the town accounts. So enterprise funds identify the total direct and indirect costs of providing the service. In FY25, the town is projecting the costs associated with the solar field operation to be about at or equal to the cost to maintain the system. This is because in FY25, the town needs to spend some additional funds in maintenance from the retained earnings to replace several solar panels throughout the system that are either underperforming or in some cases they've broken. As in years past, the total output from the system offsets the energy costs associated with powering certain town buildings, including this one, and others on the Main Street campus. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 3.
As is the finance committee.
I didn't know they did.
It's printed right here.
And they did. See, it's a good thing we do this. I will add that. Sorry.
Any questions about the Renewable Energy Enterprise Fund? Yes.
Mary Lou Barney, George Hill Road. Is this an unusual year in that the cost equal the revenue on this?
It is, because it's been up for about a decade, and so we need to do some maintenance on the panels, and they've gotten much more expensive.
Okay.
Usually, the maintenance is about $35,000, and so we're able to have retained earnings, so that version of free cash, but we don't have that. So we're using it from years past to pay for these.
So just in case folks online didn't hear the question was, is this a typical year? And the answer is no, because of the answer Kate just gave you. So, perfect. Yes, Emily.
Emily Taylor, 634 Main Street. Will that expenditure bring it completely up to date online?
Yes, it will. Yeah, I mean, it is up to date and online, it's
Yeah.
just we're missing about 6 panels.
Okay, but there's no future. Okay, or, I don't.
I hope not.
Yes, okay, yes, okay, thank you.
Let me see if there's anybody online. Okay, awesome. Article 4. Now we're cooking with gas.
Article 4 is the Water Enterprise Fund. Similar to the fund addressed in the previous article, the Enterprise Fund for Water is separate in its account and budget, where revenues and expenditures supporting the water department are segregated and appropriated to cover 100% of the costs required to run the operation. The fund is overseen by the Board of DPW Commissioners, of which I believe one is here today, Mr. DeCesare, and the Superintendent, Scott McDonald, also here. They are a separately elected entity in Lancaster. Direct costs generally consist of personnel services, operational expenses, and capital outlay, which are budgeted and accounted for in the enterprise fund balance sheets, which we also have to turn in when we certify our free cash. Indirect costs and expenditures are budgeted and accounted for in the general fund on behalf of the enterprise. So at year's end, those include some monies to accounting, treasury, and insurance for employees and equipment vehicle maintenance. And again, Superintendent Scott McDonald is here if anybody has any questions, not to put him on the spot. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Lydia Serby, 1394 Main Street. How many personnel are on the water department?
4.
Thank you.
Awesome. Question was how many personnel were on water department? Answer was 4. All right, any other questions?
No, it's that one. It's this one, yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Fantastic. Look at that. Now we're on Article. And that's
Got off easy.
the select board. The select board recommend affirmative action. Finance committee is going to make their recommendation at the town meeting. So Article 5, which is revolving fund account budgets.
So receipts from specific revenue sources that are allowed to be segregated from the general fund into separate accounts are called revolving funds. And so these funds are different from enterprise because they don't have associated chargebacks to the general fund. These funds are specifically earmarked for expenditures that support the activity, program, or service, which generates the revenue. So these funds are regulated by separate and distinct Massachusetts general laws. Typically, the revolving funds are authorized for programs and services with expenses that fluctuate with the demand and can be matched through fees and charges. In Lancaster, we have several revolving funds that include the Parks and Recreation, which is covered by MGL Chapter 44, 53D. Then separate Public Works, Planning, Community Development, Agricultural, Health and Human Services, and Library accounts, which are governed under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. And then an outside consultant or vendor revolving funds, which in Lancaster's case is the town's MART service, which is governed under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53G. Generally speaking, the revenues in these accounts are fairly static from year to year. However, this year there's a notable increase in recreation's appropriation, as the Health and Human Services staff has brought in more funds this past fiscal year than in any other year prior, over $100,000. The appropriation balance seen here reflects their increases in program and in turn the increases on expenses. So well done to them. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 5, and I believe Finance Committee will take.
There's no note here on
Okay.
that, but
I'm assuming they will.
Any questions on Article 5? Let me check on 5. All right. All right, now we are really all set. Article 6.
Well, you're going to be sorry about this one. It's a little longer.
Article 6. This one's going to go quick.
In 2022, the town applied for a Commonwealth Community Compact grant relative to human resources best practices. And in May of '23, the town received notice of the grant award from the Commonwealth to study our classification and compensation plans and to develop a single plan for all employees across all divisions, including those governed by the bylaw and those who are part of collective bargaining agreements. Lancaster has 3 unions, MassCop, who represents the sworn police personnel, and AFSCME, which represents 2 separate bargaining units, one for public works personnel and the other for the town's administrative, clerical, and library personnel. The town partnered with the Edward J. Collins Center, which is part of UMass Boston Center for Public Management, to study, analyze, and as needed, update wages and job descriptions for about 50 benchmark positions in town. The center classified each position using a point factor analysis system applied to all job descriptions and refined through in-person meetings with each staff or staff teams. In previous years, town meeting voted on one classification schedule, which was relatively limited and did not cover any of the union positions or any other collective bargaining or temporary or seasonal employees. The bylaw requires that the town meeting adopt and accept all pay scales. So the decision to seek assistance to apply for the grant was because we wanted to purposely engage in a more comprehensive and holistic method of classification, whereby town meeting could see and vote on each of the schedules together. We outlined this as a management goal in past fiscal years, and department heads agreed that all staff positions should be treated equally regardless of bargaining status or union affiliation. Having the ability to have staff positions set in uniform scales helps us as an employer to maintain internal equity between like or similarly classified positions. The labor market salary survey was conducted to compare the town's compensation levels against other municipalities. Obtaining survey data is one of the most challenging aspects of any classification and comp study, and not all municipalities have the same titles or definitions of duties under the specific title. That can make exact comparisons difficult. The municipalities that were studied by the Collins Center included the towns of Ayer, Berlin, Boston, I'm sorry, not Boston, Ayer, Berlin, Bolton,
Much different.
Boylston, Boxborough, Dunstable, Groton, Harvard, Leominster, Littleton, Lunenburg, Maynard, Northborough, Pepperell, Princeton, Shrewsbury, Sterling, Stowe, Townsend, West Boylston, and Westminster. In conducting a labor market survey, it is important to note that positions across the municipalities, as I said, are not the same. So the same title in one municipality may have different duties in another. This table highlights some of the challenges that the Collins Center said that they would have, and things that they took into consideration when determining our positions. So the project team evaluated both the average and the median pay in order to obtain accurate information. The analysis of the median pay removes the outlying data points. So municipalities have varied hours which they consider full-time. They range from anywhere from 20 to 32 hours. So using an hourly rate for comparison purposes attempts to ensure an accurate analysis In classification evaluation, it's important to note that each municipality is different, and comparability inside the organization is also important, if not more so than internal comparability. In developing the recommended salary schedule, the project team coalesced the position classification with the results of the labor market survey in order to establish salary ranges for each of the grades as seen printed in the warrant. Salary ranges were established by evaluating the median and average maximum pay and the existing pays of the positions in each grade. Each grade has a range of 30%, which is an industry norm. Oftentimes, if there's insufficient data points for a particular title, benchmarking principles were applied to the analysis. As mentioned above, one internal comparison or grade structure, it's the most important factor, is to look at internal equity. Once a determination is made that group of positions should be composed similarly, then the analysis of the survey commences. Grouping or benchmarking like positions based on similarity is used to determine the compensation ranges. Without this structure, it's impossible for us to maintain a fair and equitable classification system, and it leaves us vulnerable to wage claims, Fair Labor Standard Act claims, or at worst, people leaving or not coming to work here. So it is recommended that all employees be compensated at least to their current rate. For those positions where their current rate is above the new pay range, the project team recommended redlining or remaining the same across the board until room for growth was within the range. This didn't apply to anyone currently working for the town. The report and these scalars were outlined and adopted by the select board during their budget meetings, and most recently in terms of the adoption of this at their regular board meeting on April 1st. The full text of the report is available online, both in the human resources and in the select board sections of the website, if anyone's interested. The scales seen here represent the 3 units of employees for administrative, clerical, union, and DPW union and fire personnel, covered by the town's bylaw. There is no one currently working for the town that would be negatively impacted by these changes. Even more fortunate as well, this is a roadmap for the town's future planning. The budget seen here and reviewed in Article 1 remains unchanged by the scales, meaning what you see in the budget book and what you vote on in Article 1 will remain the same. Of course, if a staff member is promoted to a higher ranking position, then of course they would be afforded a raise, unless there's some reason not to do that. All employees will have an hourly rate that is either on the scale as an actual step or some cases in between for this first year. If the person's hourly rate is in between, then the following year, FY26, we would adjust their rate between 0.5% or 1% to get them into an actual step, and then they would have steps there until they get up to the top step. As seen in the previous slides, while some of our core employee positions are in line with current compensation levels, more than 65% were not. Specifically, the previous slide shows 43 positions that were analyzed, and of those, 28 had both the average and median top earnings at less than current market value. This means 65% of our employees, should they currently be or wish to make it to this top step, would not be paid in line with the market and therefore would probably look elsewhere. Most alarming were the rates for our police and DPW workers. While we've been making strides with the unions to slowly raise the compensation level, the ability to pay market rate for arguably some of the most important roles in our community needs to be a top priority when we're moving forward. In terms of the seasonal rate, these rates are predominantly paid from revolving accounts, which we talked about in Article 5. Money paid towards the program are allocated for the expenses of that program. So if you sign your child up for summer camp, for example, the staff are paid through those funds. It's still important, though, that town meeting adopts these pay scales. As alluded to earlier, this is the first time town meeting has been asked to opine on a wage scale for temporary or seasonal staff. Doing so is part of the town's effort to make the wage and budget information more transparent for residents. Again, I want to note that the adoption of these scales does not change the budget previously discussed in Article 1. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 6.
All right, any questions on Article 6? Emily?
Emily Taylor, 634 Main Street. I assume so teachers aren't in this because they come out of the district budget?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Question was about teachers, they're on the district budget. All right, you have a question?
Yeah, no, Coach, I just want to comment to residents. I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but we lose staff and we can't hire staff because we don't pay enough.
Even worse, some staff are leaving to work 4 days a week. So at other towns, neighboring towns. So I realize, it may just look like we're trying to pay people more money. We're trying to keep up, and it's hard. I just want everybody to know that that's part of this. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on Article 6? Yes.
Janet Lane, South Meadow Road.
What number?
I want to make sure I understand.
What number?
Oh, 436 South Meadow Road. I just wanted to try to understand, it sounded like we were okay with the rates for the current employees,
Yes.
but yet I hear people are leaving because we're not, so that sounds like a disconnect to me.
Yes, so we have had people leave to take jobs in other towns for more money or because they get to work 4 days a week for the same rate that we're paying them to work 5 days a week. As the roster for our town employees right now, everybody is on the roster somewhere. What happens is that, for example, I'm going to use DPW as an example, Scott can chime in if I'm incorrect, but in order to attract and retain laborers, they went through several recruiting periods and weren't getting anybody. And so they started bringing people in at step 8 of 8. So they're at the top step. And so then that would mean essentially, unless there's a structure movement or what is called a cost of living increase in the private sector, these folks would never have a raise. And so under this scale, a step 8 could be a step 3, for example. And so they would have an earning potential that is more, even though it's the same position, but it will take years to get there. But hiring somebody in at a step 8 and then them knowing that it will be years, if ever, for them to get a raise, pretty much automatically has them looking in other directions while they're still, working for us. And so we've lost quite a few people at the DPW for those reasons.
And this is part of what spurred the conversation and the analysis, which is why hoping this helps adjust and fix that problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was that, that's,
Yeah, that's, I think we've got 4 new people, and like you say, we had to start them at step 8 to even come in the door. Everybody else we had a lot of applicants, but once they found out the pay scales, they went elsewhere.
Yeah.
Hi, Ann Ogilvy, 4 Turner Lane. Can you tell me, did the compensation plans include raise plans? Or is it just the tables that are on the page that the town is approving? Or are there also corresponding wage increase plans that go along with this?
So we don't have a solid wage plan for increases right now, but actually after town meeting, providing that this passes, I'm hoping to bring forward what's called a merit-based system. So effectively, you would have your annual performance review, and if you get a meet standard or above standard, there's a certain percentage. If you get a doesn't meet standard, then there would be a needs improvement, and that wouldn't qualify you for a raise. From one step to the other is 2.5%. So you get 2.5% every year until you're at top step.
So there is an increase for every step, no matter where you are, you automatically go up 2.5% every year without your merit-based pay that you're hoping to implement later?
No, you have to have, right now, you just go from one step to another at 2.5%. What I'm saying is I'd like to tie that to a merit system. Right now, we don't have one.
Right now, it's just automatic.
Right now, it's just automatic, that after a 1-year anniversary, you automatically go up, and I'd like to tie that to some performance indicators.
Yes, and would you, I'll ask you this question elsewhere because it doesn't apply to this town meeting. But I guess, so while this plan you're saying has no increase to the budget for this year, have you done the calculation to predict what a blanket 2.5% raise on this plan will be for next year and what the impact on that budget would be?
So I did that, and it was too much, which is why the next year we have just the amount, either the 0.5% or percent, to get people at an actual step. So it's going to take at least 3 years to implement this, and then from there, we'll go out from there. So if everybody, now not everybody's going to be at, some people are going to be at top step because they are already making that. So when we start looking at FY27 wages, we're going to have to start looking at what's called a structure movement, which is meaning like the entire scale goes up, say 2%, because the cost of living has gone up. So this is really a year-to-year situation. But any time that you raise funds, it's about $100,000 to $150,000 across the board for everyone to get a step.
And if you get there after 3 years, incrementally raising people, I'm assuming then we have a big bill to pay. So do you know what that is? Have you calculated what the cost will be once you finally get to the 3-year, everybody's in the steps, everybody's getting 2.5% before you implement your merit pool? Do you know what the cost, I'm just trying to understand.
It's about 150,000 a year to give everybody the same increase, which is around 2.5%. Now, it's not gonna work like that because every bargaining unit has different things that they bargained, but that is with the merit increase. Right now, there's no standard. You just hit your anniversary and then you get it.
So next year, there wouldn't be any costs, but then you're thinking it'll be 1,000.
Well, no, there's a cost next year because it's 0.5% to 1%. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $75,000, give or
But you
take.
put that in the budget already.
Well, I didn't for 26, that will be in 26 budget.
Right. And then
For
the
next year,
following-
it's even.
Yeah, and then, so the first year, there would be 100,000 after this year,
I mean,
roughly.
that's roughly based on today's earning and today's employees. People will ebb and flow out of that. And so when people leave and they've been here for X amount of years, they then come in at bottom step. So there is some wiggle room there, but I can't predict in 27 who's going to be here and who isn't.
Well, we can't hold you to a figure, I'm just trying to get a ballpark, so.
If I were to do it today and everybody gets 2.5%, it's about $150,000. Not everybody's eligible for it, and hopefully everybody would be with the merit-based system because they're all performing. But again, then people that are in their first year of employment wouldn't be eligible. There's a lot of nuance here.
So does that mean for the next 3 years, we'd see an additional 100,000? So we'd have 100 for the next year, 26, 200 for 27, 300, or?
No, it
it's
doesn't
just
compound
100?
annually.
It's just 100.
But depending on who's coming and going. Again, if somebody retires, and I'm going to use Cheryl because she's been honest about it, Cheryl will be retiring next year. She's been here quite a few years. Whoever comes in after Cheryl is going to be making less than what Cheryl was making, and so you'll see a corresponding decrease there.
But roughly, you're thinking it's not that it's $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, it's $100,000 each year after this year.
Yeah, I mean,
Roughly.
I feel like you want to lock me into that, and I'm telling you, it's ebbs and flows. If I were to do it today,
I try to make,
It's more the, whether it's multiplying, that's all I'm trying to
it is
say.
not, no, it wouldn't multiply.
Okay, that's all, that was what I'm getting at, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or just 1, 1, 1. Thank you.
great. Any other questions on Article 6? Hearing none, let's move on to Article 7, which is pay bills of prior year, one of our favorite
So-
annual items.
Mass General Law requires that a city or town that has unpaid bills from a previous fiscal year that are legally unenforceable due to the insufficiency of the appropriation of the fiscal year have to be voted upon at town meeting and have to pass by a 4/5 vote of the voters present. So these invoices are charges that were for bills that were not received until after we had closed FY '23. And therefore, the town did not have the authority to pay them in this fiscal year. And they were not included in the voted appropriation at last May's town meeting. So the town is requesting town meeting's approval to pay these invoices from this year's current free cash to bring these balances into compliance. And as a sidebar, the town has been working with these companies to tell them about the law and encourage them to expedite billing moving forward, and we've had better success with that. And the select board is recommending affirmative action on Article 7.
Any questions about this article? Seeing none, Article 8, Community Preservation Committee.
The moving podium.
Sorry about that.
We have a podium that moves right to you.
Okay, do I read the whole article, or?
You don't need to, it's an
Totally up to you.
explainer opportunity, so it's.
Okay, this is simply part of the community preservation law, chapter 44B, whatever, that each year the Community Preservation Committee has to make an estimated budget for what will be coming in. This is based on, these numbers are based on the first 6 months collection of this year, because like everything in municipal finance, it rolls year to year. But we estimate that we will have a total of $177,505 from our surcharge locally. And we're estimating a 19% contribution from the state of $33,851. That's way down from this year and the year before, because we're funded from, the CPA trust fund is funded from the Registry of Deeds fees, and real estate sales have gone down, interest rates have gone up, so there's just not as many fees to go around, and there was no budget surplus last year. So we estimate to have a total of $211,536 for the...
356.
Yeah, $356 for our total budget, which is an estimate. Any
And
questions?
we'll learn more about what you do with that budget in the next article.
Absolutely.
Any questions about, when are you getting up to, for the next article?
We
Yeah, I
tag
know.
team.
Any questions about this article? That was a very good explainer, thank you. All right, now on to Article 9. Where does that $211,356 go? Article 9, Community Preservation Act, Projects and Allocations.
Okay, slide for Article 9. Oh, yeah. Oh, condense them, I see.
Do you want to have this?
Yep.
Okay.
So just a quick recap of what CPA is. We're not voting this year to whether or not to adopt CPA. That was done in 2020. We're voting on projects that have been put forward, and we're voting on approving them. As I think most people know by this time, money collected for the CPA is dedicated to historic preservation, open space and recreation, and affordable housing projects. It does not go into the general fund. It's completely cordoned off from that. Funds are collected as a 1% annual surcharge to our annual property taxes, which amounts to a little over $50 a year for average residents, with exemptions for the first 100,000 of your assessed property value, as well as for those with low-income housing and moderate-income senior housing. The CPA committee was formed in 2021, and it's our charge to educate the community about CPA, solicit submissions for CPA projects, oversee CPA budgets, and vet project proposals for submission to the select board and for town meeting. And there's a list of folks on the committee. Next slide. Funds collected this year. CPA from our property taxes, $166,432. State contribution was $32,286, which amounts to $199,718 for the total amount collected for the year. And here's a number summary for the 3 projects that were put forth and approved this year. Under open space and recreation, I'll get into a little bit of detail about each project, but first the numbers. Replacement of the town beach gate and the addition of an attendance shed for $3,500. Under open space, we're happy to see an open space project this year. This is the project management cost for land acquisition under National Wild and Scenic Rivers and Forest Project.
Technically, that's the third.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm compiling them under open space and recreation since that's one of the buckets. And then the third project is under historic preservation, and that's for the Thayer Memorial Library renovations at $70,000.
Awesome. And I should have mentioned this at the last article. Both the last article and this are recommended affirmative action from the select board.
Thank you. And at town meeting, we'll do this presentation, but each of these projects will be voted upon separately, so that you're not sort of roped into one project if you have an objection to another.
Just like gates. You really want to vote for the gates?
Right. Project 1, next slide please, Kate. Oops, sorry, go back. I'm sorry, you were on the right spot. So the $3,500 is to replace the current gate, which is set a little too far in. It's very heavy. It'll take someone's finger off one day. And for the addition of an attendance shed, which is going to allow the beach attendant to really stay in one place, pay closer attention to what's going on with cars going in. The location of the gate has been talked about a little bit, but that's really going to be under the purview of Kelly and Police Commissioner Woody. You know, we're trying to strike a balance between regulating the flow in and out. We want people to be able to visit the beach after hours, but not too many people. And you would know what I mean if you had ever had to go clean up the messes that are made by the late night partiers there. It's not pretty.
Not encouraged at all.
All right. And then the next, that's just a picture of said gate. It looks terrifying.
Very menacing.
Yeah, project 2. Historic preservation, this is for Thayer Memorial Library renovations. There's Joe in the back row. So rehabilitate and preserve portions of a failing roof and basement masonry. And repair and preserve the interior ceiling and walls damaged from water. So most of this project is due to potential water damage or water damage.
Mitigation.
Next slide. Those are some pictures.
Oops.
That's all right. We're not meant to hang on those too much. And number 3, project management for and professional services for $35,000. So Bob and others can get into a lot more detail here if there are questions, but they've worked very hard on a grant that's going to allow us to take on a whole lot of open space. And it has to be stressed that this open space is not developable open space. It's appropriate for open space, and that's it. Trails, you know, paths, things like that, yes, but there's no real income potential for this space. CPA is looking to cover the project management, legal fees, and professional services costs for that acquisition. There being no other costs associated with it. Those are the pieces of property, if anybody can make heads or tails of that at that distance.
Any questions for Article 9? Oh, yes, sorry.
Susan Sussman, 64 Nicholas Drive. Can I get a copy of that map? I had no idea where these places are when it says parcel this.
Is it online?
It should be online.
And Kate,
We'll
are we
find
going to have to
where it is.
adjust
It's in there.
anything at town
That'd be great.
meeting?
Thank you.
Email correspondence that was going on today.
I don't know till the moderator.
Okay,
comes in.
all right.
He has to say whether it's in the 4 corners.
If we could just, if I need to do anything,
This
please
will
let
be
me know.
online, so
Either
we'll do a
way,
presentation, but it'll also.
Not that one, and then do that
Zoom
one
in
as well.
also.
Yeah.
You could do
grant?
these with the exception of the one.
Okay.
That's not a team.
Okay.
So it's still.
Any other questions?
That's,
He
it's,
gave a grant.
it'll be on-
You got
it'll be
a
online.
question?
Any other questions? Yes.
Not really a question, just I want to reiterate to the town that we're getting to reap the benefit of the CPA. We signed this in 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
Voted in
2020
2020.
Linnea like spearheaded it, and she's a big proponent of it, matching funds by the state. So what was it, 2.5%? And then how much does the state match? 50%?
The state match varies accordingly to the registry, what is collected and what the budget surplus, but there's no budget surplus this year, but what comes in from the registry of deeds, and the percentage is based on the funds collected. It's a big formula.
But we get money from the state.
We get free money from the state.
Yeah. So just the story I want to quickly tell is, you know, if you can go back one, 600, with grant money plus state money to get 643 acres of protected land, like, that's an amazing story for the town.
But CPA is just going to cover the legal fees of the conservation
It's
restrictions.
just an amazing story. I just hope every resident's proud of that. Thank you.
It's good collaboration as well.
Yes. Emily?
Emily Taylor, 634 Main Street. With this becoming open space and part of the town, are there any like stewardship responsibilities that then fall to the town in terms of like trash or that sort of thing?
That is going to fall under conservation?
Yes.
Okay.
So, because it's part of a piece, we're transferring part of the town forest to conservation, and it ends up all becoming, it's actually will end up being a spectacular example of collaboration and working together to really preserve some magical open space and have really clear defined rules of who's doing what.
Great.
And
I
they have
live
a budget
for
for
some of that, and there's a lot of trash, and it would be great.
trail
nip that
stewardship,
one in the
trail
bud.
stewardship and trash pickup, they have a budget for.
And it's a lot of them are carry in, carry out, so hopefully.
Well,
Well, I
I'll
know.
see how that works.
Okay.
And Bob has a question on Article 9.
Well, I want to just explain some things. Most of the land that's going to the Conservation Commission is already town land.
Right.
Town's already responsible for the trash in the town forest. One of the pieces of land that's being transferred, some of it is private and is only going to have conservation restrictions on it, which leaves it in the property owner's hands. This little piece here is going to be transferred, and that one, there's one question I would like the board to be prepared to answer if it comes up at the town meeting. This is the old dam site. Some insurance companies get allergic when you say the word dam. It's a dam remnant. It doesn't hold back any water. So if there's any concerns there, you might want to check with your insurance source.
To be very clear, all we're asking at the town meeting is to approve the CPA spending money to cover the legal fees of doing this transfer. But yes, that is something we.
And of course, if they don't spend the 35,000, it goes back into the CPA fund.
Exactly,
And we did-
fantastic.
So we did endorse the Forest Legacy grant at prior meetings.
But I don't want to muddy that what they're being asked is not Forest Legacy, it's about.
It's about CPA.
This project. Perfect, yep, fantastic, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Victoria?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a quick comment on the map that's on the screen right now.
Name and address, Victoria. Name and address.
Sorry, Victoria Petrarca, 67 Woodland Meadow Drive, and I'm speaking as a private resident and a Forest Legacy volunteer. Parcel was labeled as number 16. It says underneath that 28-18, it's actually 28-19. It's part of the Bloodtown Forest, and that's a small typo. There's been some communication with Kate about this already, but I just wanted to bring it up for anyone who watches this meeting tonight or on cable that it is in fact Bloodtown Forest. It's not 28-18 is a different parcel. So just to be super transparent, this is Bloodtown Forest. It's not the private parcel owned by a resident of Lancaster. It's not 28-18, it's 28-19.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Meeting on the moderator.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on to Article 10. Thank you to our CPA friends. Article 10 is the adoption of prudent investment rule.
Of course, my leg fell asleep.
This also has an affirmative action recommendation from the select board.
Okay, Article 10, the fiscal year '24 state budget included a change to the standards for investment of trust funds for municipalities. This is included in Chapter 28 of the Special Acts of 2023 and includes a change to the standards for investment of trust funds. And so therefore, we are seeking to amend Chapter 26 and have the local acceptance provision, which allows investments in accordance with what the legislature is calling the prudent investment rule. The revised Chapter 44, Section 54 is here in yellow. And it will not allow all of the town funds to benefit from this, but there are a couple that could likely see a higher interest draw from the updated law. And so before we explore that, we have to adopt the new section in the chapter, and then the treasurer will go ahead and explore what we can do.
Fantastic. Any questions about Article 10? Seeing none, Article 11, ratification of the acquisition of North Lancaster Lake.
So this vote is the final step, which was included in the renegotiated memorandum of understanding between the town and 702 LLC, which happened in October of '23. It conveys the entirety of approximately 90 acres of property in North Lancaster to the town. The properties in question are sited along the Nashua River and are adjacent to several other town, land trust, or conservation parcels. Both parcels were conveyed to the town by 702 LLC in February of this year. After the matter was renegotiated in October, the town received 2 quitclaim deeds, and upon affirmative vote of town meeting, we can forward those to the Registry of Deeds, and they will be recorded as Lancaster parcels and added to the open space inventory. I would imagine that you would see a future article at a future town meeting, then transferring them from the select board to the Conservation Commission.
I would imagine you would.
The
Fantastic.
select board recommends affirmative action.
Anybody with any question about Article 11? Yes, Bob.
Can we go back to the map for a minute? Just a correction.
7A is Lancaster Land Trust. 10 is not.
Okay.
But it doesn't impact the land we're accepting. But thank you. Okay, any things about the actual article? Yes, Sarah.
Ann Ogilvy, 4 Turner Lane. I just have questions about the language in the article that says by gift, purchase, or eminent domain. Is that just sort of boilerplate?
It's boilerplate.
There's no purchase happening here. There will be no funds expended for these except for the legal fees that you need to do to make this happen.
To record the.
Actually, we required them to pay it, so
So
not
we're
even that.
paying those.
Not
So
an
there are no fees here, but the language, you have to have it say that.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question, good clarifying question, thank you. All right, anything else on Article 11? Okay, Article 12, approval of parcel considerations for the Lancaster Butters lot sales program.
So this article is step 3 of a 4-step process by which the town adopts and oversees an abutter land program. So discussed and accepted at last year's annual town meeting, the town voted to accept the idea of a butter lot sales program where either blighted or vacant parcels which were unbuildable and property of the town could be acquired for a fee by an abutter for certain residential uses. The program allows the return of these parcels to the tax rolls and provides for their upkeep and beautification, as they would no longer be vacant but would be maintained by the purchasing abutter. Under the terms of the program, town meeting must accept the properties which the town wishes to put forth for purchase. Step 4, pending adoption at town meeting, will shift then to the town, whereby we will publicize the available parcels and solicit abutters relative to the sale of said parcels, subject to an adequate title search and other legal requirements paid for by the purchasers, plus adequate compensation as outlined in the policy, which is $1 per square foot, which was adopted by the select board during their December 18th, 2023 regular meeting. The text of the program and the policies are also available online on the town's webpage. There are 7 parcels available for sale which meet the criteria for the program and have the maximum assessed value criteria less than $35,000 and have been deemed unbuildable. They are noted here on these maps, which are somewhat small, but.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In the article, there's 3 lots that are all the same size, 0.37 acres, and 2 are valued at estimated 201 at 8,300.
That would be a question for the assessors, because I don't know exactly why that would be.
Yeah, all right. Okay, any questions about Article 12? Okay, Article 13. Adoption of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 21. Also, Article 12, Select Board recommends affirmative action. As we do for 13.
Article 13 seeks to adopt Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 21, whereby the Select Board may appoint a Chief of Police and Fire to serve under the colloquial term of Commissioner of Public Safety. Lancaster employed a dual chief years back. Chief Kevin Lamb was both the police and fire chief. Unfortunately, as the town began to contemplate a similar scenario for Chief Moody, the town was unable to find a corresponding affirmative vote of town meeting to allow the dual role. So in an effort to ensure that the appointments are made by the select board, both current and future, are done consistent with the law, the town is asking town meeting to formally adopt the statute. The select board recommends affirmative action and wishes to thank Commissioner Moody for his willingness to hold this important dual role for our town.
Any questions about Article 13? Seeing Seeing none. Article 14, transfer of care, custody, and control of the Bloodtown Forest, which we have discussed as part of the Forest Legacy.
Right, okay, so through the adoption and funding of the Forest Legacy Program, the town's Land Trust and Conservation and Forest Commissioners seek to enact a permanent conservation restriction on 5 tracts of land totaling 648 acres, which are part of the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Forest Project. Funded predominantly by the U.S. Forest Service, the Legacy Program will have $125,000 voted upon as part of the budget in Article 1, and other funds provided by the CPA, as discussed and voted upon in Article 9, to conserve these lands. This article seeks to transfer Assessor's Parcel 28-1 with an address of 0 Brockman Road from the Lancaster Select Board to the town's Conservation Commission so they may pursue a permanent restriction for the lands in perpetuity. The Select Board, Planning Board, and Conservation Commission recommend affirmative action on this article.
Any questions on Article 14? Victoria.
Hi, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Victoria Petrarca, 67 Woodland Meadow Drive. Kate, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words about this. There is a second parcel that makes up the town forest that was in the original warrant, and we learned today that it was taken out, and it's the 28-19 that I was just referring to a few minutes ago. Apparently, there was a typo, and it said, 28-18, which is not in Bloodtown Forest, and so it, I guess in the warrant review, at some point it got dropped. But, and I guess we can, the moderator about this, but again, I'm just doing my public outreach to say that those of us who worked on this project would really like to get the other half conserved, which is parcel 28-19. I guess that remains to be seen if we can do that at the town meeting. And I think, Kate, we're going to talk to the town moderator about that. So that's all. I'm just doing my outreach to anyone who's watching this tonight. So we'd like to do the other half of the forest at the same time.
So,
Which was the intention?
nobody was, yeah, so we understand that. Unfortunately, the map that was forwarded to the town had the wrong thing on it. So when I wrote back and said this isn't the town doesn't own this land, so we can't have this as part of the restriction, I don't know what got dropped on the other end, but that's why it was removed. What the moderator will have to determine is whether having it as 28-19, which is not on this map, is in the 4 corners of the article, and I can tell you that I didn't think it was, because I think that we haven't noticed it properly, and town council doesn't think it is. So it's very likely that this might get pulled and put on to special town meeting so that it can be noticed appropriately, because I think regardless of whether everybody thinks this is a wonderful idea, both parcels are not called out. So if you wanted to do it holistically, then I would pull the whole thing and do them at the same time, or you do half of it and the other half of it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to do that, because if we have a special town meeting, you can do the other half. So when I hear back, but I just, in the interest of setting expectations, I don't think that the moderator is going to decide on the advice to not follow town council and say that it's within the 4 corners, which is what I was trying to tell.
But we can do half of it at this, and this amounts to the transfer from the select board's management to conservation commission, so it's not.
The town forest does. 19
Yeah.
is private, correct?
No, 19
No,
is
what
the
was on the
town's.
map was
19 is
Which
the
is
town's.
why it got pulled, because I wrote back and said, wait, what you gave me is, we don't own it.
This is just
So we
about-
can't conserve it
This
if
is
we
just
don't own
about
it.
transferring the care, custody, and control of the town.
So that's a policy decision that you guys can discuss, whether
Yes,
you want to do it holistically or in parts.
So now I'm completely confused. Susan Sessom, 64 Nicholas Drive. Is the map, not the numbers, but the drawing of the property
That's correct.
correct?
This is a different-
It's just the number.
That one number.
That one number, yeah.
It should be 19 instead of.
Yeah, so I was able to
18.
Photoshop what we had gotten, but this is a different article.
Right,
Rest
it's a
assured,
different
we will
article,
tackle
but it's this, it's on this map.
Yeah. Right there, yeah.
Right there, yeah.
Okay, any questions about Article 14? All right, Article 15, ratification of the veterans tax exclusion.
This article seeks to ratify an affirmative vote of town meeting, which was taken October 1st of 2012. Through that vote, the town formally adopted Mass General Law, Chapter 50, Section 5N, which allowed veterans the ability to engage and benefit from a town's tax work-off program, similar to the senior work program. The statute written here allows the town to establish a work-off veterans program consistent with Mass General Law. This provides veterans the opportunities that in turn contribute to lowering their tax burden. While the statute was adopted by town meeting in 2012, the town neglected to notify the State Department of Revenue of its acceptance or submit the required paperwork. So unfortunately, without these steps, the program was never officially created, and so our veterans were not able to avail themselves of the opportunity. So the town would very much like to provide this opportunity to our veterans, and we were asking for town meeting's ratification of the 2012 affirmative vote so we can complete the required paperwork, send it to the state, and be able to offer this effective July 1st.
And the select board recommends affirmative action. Any questions about Article 15? Okay, Article 16, hawkers and peddlers. I promise you the explanation is briefer than the 4 pages that are printed. Promise.
It is briefer, yes. So the town has received a growing number of questions and statements of concern from residents surrounding door-to-door sales. And the town's current bylaw as written deals only with the selling of fruit and fish from door to door.
In baskets.
In baskets. So interestingly, it also had the select board as the overseers of the fish and fruit in a basket. And that the town clerk was required to maintain the paperwork, although the issue of paperwork and what that meant was not clearly defined. So in reviewing this bylaw with the commissioner and trying to figure out how it was that we could perhaps inform the selling community, we wanted to help with current door-to-door sale regulations and make sure that the bylaw, we assume, has not been visited for many years because to the best of our knowledge, there doesn't seem to be a run of door-to-door fish salesmen, or women. Regardless, those who do wish to canvass or sell other types of items generally seek permission, if they are going to seek permission, from the police department, which is usually what the standard is for other communities. So in consultation with the commissioner, we're asking that the town code of chapter 92 be amended as printed in the warrant, which we don't have to read through, but it is there. Beginning on page 8, and the changes protect the privacy of our residents and prevents abuse and fraud. While the town has no intent to infringe upon anyone's rights protected under the Constitution relative to door-to-door sales, we want to restrict certain door-to-door activities by placing reasonable limits on the times that that's acceptable in the activities and how one should notify the town relative to their intent to solicit. And the select board recommends affirmative action on Article 16.
Indeed we do. Any questions about hawkers and peddlers? Emily?
Emily Taylor, 634 Main Street. This includes political?
So political is protected.
Protected speech. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
That's a very good question. Emily also is the last known fish hawker.
I have a great deal on tripe right now, so just let me know.
Fish tripe.
I have to say, as a staff, we had a lot of questions about what kind of fish would have warranted such a, given that we're not near the ocean.
Right out of the national. All right, Article 17 is the acceptance of Mass General Law relative to credible service for call firefighters.
This article seeks to adopt Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 2B and a half, which is written here, which is very long. The full text, just so that everyone knows, if we are adopting a Mass General Law, the full text of those laws will be available and printed on handouts that'll be near where the warrants are. So if people are interested in reading the full text, I'm a big proponent of telling people what they're agreeing to and not just the small parts of it that we want. But it's written here, obviously, and after tonight, we're going to post this online too, so you can go in and read it, and it'll have links to the MGL. So adoption of this law provides baseline criteria for converting part-time and call service for our firefighting staff to full-time service where applicable. So affirmative action on this article allows the retirement boards the ability to calculate an individual's part-time service if they've worked for Lancaster Fire EMS, either in a part-time or per diem fashion, and it would be credible towards their pension in the event that they are a full-time fire member, either in Lancaster or elsewhere. Again, the full text will be available, and the select board recommends affirmative action.
Indeed we do. Any questions about Article 17? Seeing none. Article 18, amendments to the town code relative to animal control.
So this town seeks to amend the town's animal control bylaw by aligning the rules and regulations to the current practice and having the duties of the current Animal Control Commission, which is not met in quite a few years, effectively disbanded. Those responsibilities would become part of the select board duties, as those offices are permanent fixtures in town and would carry on those duties in conjunction with the Public Safety Commissioner. The town staff have been able to speak with some of the former members of the Animal Control Commission who are in favor of this charge. The town has not been in compliance with this bylaw for many years, and should the need arise where a matter may have to be heard by the Animal Control Board, it's important to know that meeting can take place and that there would be a quorum of commissioners available to preside over the matter. Additionally, the new provisions here allow the town select board to delegate their authority to appoint an animal control officer to the Public Safety Commissioner or another qualified member of the town staff should they choose to do so. This allows for the hiring of such a position to be overseen and completed in the same manner as all the other town employee recruitments and onboarding activities. It also has the animal control officer's salary appear and governed under the same regulations as afforded in the personnel bylaw and the class and comp plan, which we previously discussed in Article 6.
Any questions about Article 18? Yes.
Linda Survey, 1394 Main Street. So basically, you're just abolishing the committee that hasn't met in a while.
Yep.
But then the select board would be hiring the animal control officer?
We could empower the commissioner to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there really wouldn't be a whole lot of change? We're a right to farm community, that kind of thing? Okay.
We just actually have you'd have a process in place that could be actionable, rather than the commission that hasn't been around. Any other questions? Very good question. Any other questions? Okay, now we are on to our two citizens petitions. Article 19 on Hawthorne Lane. Is there someone here representing?
No, well, I am not the proponent. The proponent is actually on a business trip. And so she wrote to me and said that she was sorry for missing it, but she would have something that she would bring forward at town meeting.
Okay.
So I will turn this over.
So we are
Around.
moving on to Article 20.
I would, yes, because I don't.
Article 11, or Article 19, you can read as it's to have the town accept the layout of Hawthorne Lane as a public way. But again, we will have that person explain at the town meeting. Because it is a citizen's petition brought by them. We the town clerk receives a citizen's petition, and then they go on the warrant if they meet all the requirements, and we can't edit them, touch them, anything. It's the beauty of citizen government. All right, speaking of the beauty of citizen government, Article 20, which is the proposing an act increasing the membership of the select board, the town of Lancaster. It's a citizen's petition. Who will be speaking?
I know.
Want me to move over so you guys can sit right here?
Just stop sharing.
Do you have the one I sent you, or I have it on the thumb drive too? Oh, you got it there.
Take it away.
All right.
Oh, it's being a little persnickety here. Here we go. Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right, so this is Article 20 for town meeting. This is a citizen's petition. This is an opportunity to begin the process of expanding the select board from 3 members to 5. So this little presentation will be different than what we give at town meeting. It'll just cover the nuts and bolts of this. So we're going to cover the objective and the effect of the article, what's included in the text of the article, because it's kind of a dense block of text, what happens after the article is ultimately approved, and then town survey results, recommendations, and reviews that were related to this article from the past year. And then finally, where you can go for more info. All right, next slide. All right, so what is the objective and the effect of this article? The objective is to begin the process of expanding the town's select board from 3 members to 5 members. The whole process will actually take 2 years, and it requires a second ballot vote that we would take next May in 2026. And the effect of the article is the approval of this article authorizes the town to ask the state to pass special legislation for us. And that allows the town to take the ballot vote next May. The town has to request special legislation for various things. You might remember when we took the police out of civil service, we had to ask the state to pass special legislation for us. It's routine. Towns do this every year. All right, next slide. What's included in the text of the very long article? It authorizes the town to request the special legislation, which I said is routine. It requests that the state legislation not take effect until the town approves it with a ballot vote. That's something that the state usually requires anyway. And then it ensures that the final election of new board members won't happen earlier than the local election in May 2026. There's some concern that if there was a special election for some reason during the year, we might end up electing 3 selectmen in the middle of the winter and people wouldn't expect it. So that guarantees that it won't happen prior to 2026 at the town election. What's included in the text of the article? So we just did that one, yep. Oh yeah, back to the next slide, thank you. You just anticipated me. What happens after the article's approved? So it's 3 steps. Step 1 is this year. After the approval of Article 20 at town meeting, the town requests special legislation to allow the expansion. Step 2 would happen next year at the annual town election. So you'd see a little box, kind of like that box in the middle at the right. Just a question, shall an act passed by the general court entitled "An Act Increasing the Membership of the Board of Selectmen in the Town of that was from Milton, where we took the example from, we'd be Lancaster, be accepted, yes or no. Kind of like the ballot question we'll answer this year. And then approval of that formally accepts the change that the state passed for us. And then step 3 is in 2026. So at the annual town election in 2026, instead of electing 1 select board member, we'd elect 3 that year. 1 would fill the expiring term that year, and 2 would fill the newly created seats. And so the ballot in the lower right-hand corner on that slide is the ballot question from when Milton did this. And they took a list of nominees, and you picked 3 selectmen from the list to fill the new positions. And the way it will work is, depending on who gets the most votes, whoever gets the most votes from that list will serve the 3-year term. Second most votes serves a 2-year term, and the person who wins but gets the least votes will serve a 1-year term. And that sets us up to a rotation where most years we elect 2 select board members, and then every 3 years we just elect 1. We have a 5-member select board. All right, next slide. Over the past year, you might remember this article from or a similar article from last year's annual town meeting, and one of the concerns was that we had a new government study committee, and people wanted it to take a look at this before we did anything. And so a couple things happened. First, the Massachusetts Division of Local Services did a review of Lancaster. It's a financial management review that the report was dated September 2023, and they actually recommended that we consider increasing the select board membership from 3 to 5 members. And their rationale, looking at it from a financial management standpoint, was that 2 or more members may allow discussion and deliberations to continue past where a 3-member board could find itself deadlocked, and it would aid in the formation of subcommittees and liaising with other boards and committees, expanding communication with reduced risk to open meeting law violations. And that report is available on the town website. Want to take a look at it? Next slide. And the Town Government Study Committee did take a look at it. You might remember that in 2022, at the annual town meeting, we voted to establish a government study committee. And over the past 2 years, that committee met and delivered a report this year. And as part of their review, they identified select board size as an opportunity, and we talked about it. The question was included, the question of select board membership was included on a survey that was conducted. And respondents to the survey indicated a strong interest in increasing the size of the board. Among those favoring expansion, 5 members was by far the preferred size. And that committee, the Government Study Committee, voted unanimously to recommend a vote on this subject at town meeting this year. Next slide. All right, so that's the nuts and bolts of this article, what's included, and what would happen after this was approved. If you have more questions, we have a website, expandOurSelectBoard.com, where you can find information on the article and links to some of the reports that I talked about. And we also have an email address, info@expandOurSelectBoard.com, and if you send a message to there, we can get you a deeper answer to any questions you have before town meeting.
Thanks, Russ.
Any questions online for?
Can I just add that the full government study report is on the town website as well? That's good.
Yeah, I'll link that on the website. It's not
Any questions from inside the room?
It is, it is.
All right. Well, there you go. Such a thorough presentation. All right.
No questions?
We're good to go.
Okay,
No
perfect.
questions.
Wonderful.
All right. I don't believe there's any more business to come before the select board, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. For a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night, everybody.